All right, before we get into mental game, can you introduce yourself and tell me a bit about your journey throughout the game of golf?
Sure. I'm Dave Dell, I'm the head golf professional here at Quail West. Um, it's been a long path to get to here. I was the head professional at a couple different courses up north, up in Connecticut and Massachusetts. Most recently Springfield Country Club before we decided to move to Florida. My journey to here is a long one. I certainly played a lot of competitive golf throughout my career as a club pro, and well, I'm sure we'll dive into more of it as we go.
First question, what's a common mental barrier you see in golfers from young players to pros?
Well, from my own experience, having confidence in your own ability versus others is always a barrier. Like, for instance, I knew a young junior golfer who was a pretty good player and hit the ball great. And when he was on the range, if he was by himself, he would be hitting them beautifully. But as soon as maybe an older kid or a kid who hit it a little farther or maybe a little better came up and started hitting balls, this particular junior would kind of shy away from practicing and go do something else because he felt a little bit inferior to this other player. That's a barrier that we all have to deal with, because what that guy's doing in this game doesn't really matter. You know, it's all about what you do, and on the course, it's just basically you against each hole and against the course. What other people do, it takes a long time to learn it, but what other people do really is inconsequential.
That actually goes into the next question very well. Many golfers struggle with playing in front of a crowd in high competition. What's one way you go about handling that pressure?
Well, the best way to handle that is to do it often. Now, that's easier said than done. You don't always have a crowd out watching you, but certainly the more you're put into that situation, the more comfortable you're going to get with it. The first time, I think almost everybody has a tough time handling that, when all of a sudden they're feeling all these eyes on them, and it's a distraction. It gets you out of your comfort zone. I heard a tour player once say it takes time to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's very, very true in golf, because it's such a mental game in addition to the physical side. So obviously experience plays a big part in that. The other thing is, and it's so much easier said than done, but having a good routine and sticking to it, or having one or two swing thoughts and sticking to it, and trying to get into your own little zone where it is just you and the golf shot you're about to play. That's the best way to combat all those external forces that seem to be working as a distraction to get you off your game.
What's the importance to you of visualization in golf?
You know, I'm a big feel player. I've had people tell me I'm a feel player. I'm not exactly sure what that means. I'm probably not the best visualizer, but I do picture a shot that I'm going to hit in my head before I hit it. And then I try to get up over the ball and feel that shot. So for instance, if I see, if I got, let's say, an 8-iron into a par 3 and the pin is on the left side, I'm going to aim that ball at the middle of the green and try to turn it from right to left toward that pin. I visualize that nice little baby draw from right to left, and then I get over the ball and just try to feel my way into hitting it. So visualization plays a huge role, and I think the better you are at visualizing shots, the better you are going to be as a player, because visualizing good shots before you hit them has been proven as a technique that works. So the better you are at visualizing shots, the better you're going to be pulling them off.
How important is it to have patience, whether it's during a round or just overall becoming a better golfer?
Yeah, that's a great one. You know, every tournament you see, a PGA player will say, well, I was very patient, or I just have to be patient. Patient, that's all they talk about. But, you know, it's so much easier said than done. But a couple of thoughts come into my head. First, in golf, things do tend to level out. Now, in other words, you might get a couple bad breaks early on and be frustrated with that. And, be borderline on losing your cool. But if you can hang in there, and that's a big if, things do tend to even out. You might get a couple good breaks coming in, or maybe in the next tournament you get more good ones than bad ones. But over time period, those things that sometimes it feels like the world is just against you, and you're wearing a kick me sign on your back, and every bounce is a bad one, and every lie is a crummy one. You got to hang in there and be patient with that, because those things do tend to even out over time. So if you get a couple of shots where looks like it's going to carry a bunker, it hits the lip and comes back in, sooner or later you're going to carry that lip and bounce up there near the pit. You just got to be patient and wait for the good stuff to happen.
Absolutely. A lot of people call themselves scratch range players. How does a golfer go from hitting the ball perfectly on the range and translating that onto the course?
Yeah, that's a good one. A million times in my life I have heard, including myself, say, geez, I was hitting it so good on the range, or I wasn't doing that on the range, or geez, I made everything on the putting green. I come out here onto the course, I can't make a thing. That's the wrong thought to have. If that thought pops into your head, get rid of it. The proper thought there would be, geez, I probably need to practice this more. Because if you practice something enough, there's no problem translating it to the golf course. If you're not translating your game and your shots to the course, it means you're not there yet. You need to hit more and practice more. And it can be frustrating at times, because you'll be on the range, you'll hit 10 perfect drives, you go out on the course, you whip one to the right, or you hook one left. But there is a point where you practice it enough and stay positive, it will translate to the course. I guarantee it.
If you could go back and specifically coach your younger self, what advice would you give?
It comes back to that first question you asked me. I would try to instill upon myself to be more comfortable in my own skin, to be more confident in my own abilities. I've always been a little intimidated, a little of the fear for the unknown. Like you hear this guy's a great player, and now you're paired with him. So you spend too much time watching him and what he's doing, and watching his swing and his shots, and you start to lose that ability to focus on what's important, which is your own game and your battle against each hole in the course. So if I could go back and tell myself to just be comfortable with myself and focus on what I'm doing and stop worrying so much about what everybody else is doing, I think I would have been better off. I think I've learned that lesson, but to be honest, if you put me into a tour event or a Champions Tour event tomorrow, I'm sure it would be the same thing. So it takes a while to learn that, but golf is really, it's a battle between you and the course, not so much other people, even in match play. So the best way to combat that is to focus on your own skills and your own game, play to your strengths, play each hole the way you think it would be best to play it, and stop worrying about what everybody else is doing. That would be my advice.
How do you go about your pre-shot routine? What do you think the importance of that is?
The pre-shot routine is really important for two reasons. Number one, when you're under pressure, it is the best way to combat all the distractions, to focus on what you do over and over and over again. So a pre-shot routine is really important towards staying in your comfort zone and staying focused on what you're doing and not letting all the external factors have their way with you. So it's extremely important from that regard. It just helps to get into a flow for the round by doing the same thing repeatedly over and over. There was a statistic it was like the last time Jack Nicklaus won the PGA or the US Open, on the final 9 holes of the tournament, from the time he picked the club out of the bag to the time he made impact with the ball, the entire last 9 never varied by more than a half of a second. Now, that is a pre-shot routine. That is duplicating your routine, what works for you, over and over and over, to the point where it just becomes like you're on the range and you're just hitting shots, just picking a target and hitting it at it. It's a wonderful thing.
How does a player build confidence in their game?
Well, confidence comes through good experiences, right? It can come in a number of different ways. It can come from really having a good range session, or playing some games on the putting green even with yourself and winning those games. It can come from a variety of good shots, good scores, overcoming the elements, you name it. It comes from a wide range of sources, but those experiences have to be positive for you to gain that confidence, right? You can't go out and lose 6 balls and shoot some big high number and go step up on the next tee confidently, or in the first tee in the next round confidently. It's not going to happen. So it has to come from positive experiences, but that can come from a wide range of sources. A good practice session on the range can certainly help you to step up on the first tee and feel like you're going to stripe it down the middle. Making some good positive swings in the first few holes can certainly lead to making positive swings on the next few holes. So confidence comes from a wide range of sources, but it needs to be a positive experience. It needs to be, you need to meet with some success in order to gain that confidence.
Who's the most mentally tough golfer you've watched, played with, or taught, and what made them special?
Well, there's this ongoing conversation about who's the best player ever. Is it Nicklaus or is it Tiger? Well, to me, they were the 2 best golfers under pressure that I ever seen in my life. They were both equally as talented, no matter what the circumstances were, especially when the pressure was at its greatest. Michael Jordan was that way in basketball. The great ones just have that ability to perform at their best and block out all those forces that lead to you feeling uneasy or feeling apprehensive about it. They're just so good. So, in the more recent era, Tiger Woods was just amazing at how many times he had to make a shot or he had to make a putt. It was do or die, and he seemed to come through every time. It was amazing. So certainly Tiger Woods. Among local guys, I had a friend when I was young who was just simply better at playing under pressure than the rest of us were. And I'm not quite sure why. I guess maybe he was just born that way, but the pressure never seemed to affect him. He was the same golfer on the 18th hole, the last hole of the tournament, that he was on the first hole the first day. Is that something we're born with? Yeah, to a large degree. Is it something that can be learned? Yeah, absolutely. But it takes positive experiences to get there.
And then last question, if you had to give one piece of advice to golfers struggling with the mental side of the game, what would it be?
Boy, that's a good one. I would say if you're struggling with the mental side, there's no substitute for repetition on the driving range or even on the golf course. If you're struggling mentally to overcome something, look at Rory at the Masters this past weekend. Rory was mentally shot coming down the stretch in that tournament. But he was so good physically, he was able to overcome the mental side that was really working against him, trying to win that first Masters, trying to win that Grand Slam, all the pressure he had put on himself and others had put on him. You could see that his mental side was not strong, but his physical side was, because he's been practicing and playing and is confident in his own ability, and in the end, that won out. I think the best thing you can do if you're struggling mentally is to work harder physically, because that will translate eventually. If you're on the range and you're able to take a 7-iron and hit 10 shots in a row pretty much right at your target, there's nothing better for the mental side than knowing you can do it. And it'll help on the course when your mental side starts to fail and doubt starts to creep in. The fact that you physically are able time and time again to hit that shot will help. It'll help overcome any mental insufficiencies.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Very welcome.